Have you ever been around someone who just makes you evaluate your life? It's not that they're pushy or they tell you how you should live your life or anything like that, but just the very way they live makes you evaluate how you're living your life. For me, I had a friend like that, and his name was Kravitz. See, Kravitz, I met him as he was on a journey trying to find God, and through our friendship, he actually committed his life to Christ. I got to baptize him, but then he got the privilege of trying to figure out, how do you follow Jesus not just once, but day by day by day? And so he went on several journeys of what does that look like? Well, one of those was with generosity. And his journey started like this. He lived in an apartment building. And every day he'd go down and he'd get in his car. He went to use the same route to work. And on the corner was a stop sign. And at this stop sign, there was this homeless man. And so what happened is probably the same way that most of us interact with people, is that he would just drive by and God would prompt him and say, hey, you need to give him something. So he'd scrounge up a few dollars or some coins or a granola bar, really whatever he had, and he'd give it to this man. But over time, he felt like God was telling him, there's more. There's more to this. There's more to caring for that man than just that. So he learned his name, and his name was Johnny. And then he began to go, you know what? I can do more than just give him randomly. I could provide him breakfast every morning. So he stopped eating cereal, and he started making breakfast burritos every morning. He'd make two, one for him, one for his friend Johnny, and he'd go get in his car, go to the stop sign, roll down his window, hand one to Johnny, and go to work. And he did this for a while. But then again, he got this sense that, hey, there's more. There's more. God wants me to do more. And so he started saying, hey, you know what? On weekends, I actually have more time. So on every Saturday, he'd go to that same way, he'd stop at that same stop sign. Johnny would jump in and they'd go to breakfast. And they began to develop a friendship. And then Kravitz began taking him all over town. He'd take him to get groceries, job interviews. He'd take him to church. And I'll never forget the day that all of my friends, we were eating Christmas dinner. And in walks Kravitz with Johnny. And I can promise you, everyone in that room had to evaluate how they were caring for people. How they were meeting others' needs. Because the thing was, Kravitz was just a regular dude. But what he was doing was sharing what he had with someone that had a need. And in this series, we've been talking about sharing. In week 1, we talked about how the godly people, they're generous. That when you're generous, it leads to godliness. And then last week, we talked about when you're generous, it leads to blessing. I want to talk about a third reason that you and I should live a life of generosity. And it's because when we are generous, we can meet the needs of others. We're going to be in Acts chapter 2, if you want to turn there. Acts chapter 2, starting in verse 42 through 47. And we're going to read that together. It's going to be up here on the screens. It says this, it starts by saying, all the believers devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, and to the sharing in meals, including the Lord's Supper and to prayer. A deep sense of awe came over them all, and the apostles performed many miraculous signs and wonders. And all the believers met together in one place and shared everything they had. They sold their property and possessions and shared the money with those in need. They worshiped together at the temple each day, met in homes for the Lord's Supper, and shared their meals with great joy and generosity, all the while praising God and enjoying the goodwill of all the people. And each day the Lord added to their fellowship those who were being saved. So it says here that they went and they sold property and possessions and shared with those in need. Apparently, the first church and the early Christians, they didn't see their stuff as just things that they got to use. It wasn't just for them to use however they wanted. Instead, It was for the use of everyone around them. See, they didn't just give extra stuff that they have. You know how sometimes, like, if you hear someone needs a shirt, you go into your closet and you're like, oh, well, I have 40 of them. Maybe I could give them one. Like, no doubt they did that. But it says that they actually took possessions and property, that they went and sold that and gave the money to someone that needed it. See, they were really serious about meeting the needs of others. So the question becomes, why were they so serious about this? Why was this such a big deal? Well, they were serious about it because Jesus was really serious about it. If you read the New Testament, Jesus talks about meeting the needs of others all the time. Let me give you one example. It's in Matthew chapter 25. We're not going to read it together, but I encourage you to go read it later. In this passage, Jesus is talking about how can you tell the difference between people who are my followers and people who are not? And you know what Jesus says? Jesus says that those that are my followers, they will clothe those who need clothes. They will feed those who are hungry. They'll take care of those who are sick. They'll visit the prisoner. Jesus said that his followers, that would be the defining aspect of them. And in fact, what he said is, anytime that you serve someone that needs clothes, that's hungry, that is sick, that's a prisoner, Jesus said that you actually serve him. See, it was a big deal to Jesus that you and I, we would meet the needs of others. Well, this week as I was preparing to talk about this, my wife and I, we went on a walk and we got back. And as soon as we walk in the door, there's a knock at the front door. And it's around the time that we're about to feed my daughter and we're not really expecting company. And so I just expected it to be the UPS man, right? Like it's an Amazon package. So I'll just walk to the door, no big deal. Well, I open the door and it's not UPS. No, it's my worst nightmare. It's two cute 10-year-old girls that are there to sell me something, right? Okay, we've all been there. We know what's going to happen. And I'm like, dang it, they got me, right? I'm going to buy whatever it is that they're selling. And they begin their pitch and they're talking. And it's not until the very end where they go, actually, what we're doing is we're out raising money for my aunt who has skin cancer. And in a moment, my whole attitude changed, right? I run inside, I get some cash, and my mind's kind of spinning because I don't really even know what they were asking for. And I go out there and I hand them some cash and I said, hey, but I want to give you this money, but really what I want to do, could I pray for you? Because there's a need right here. And their eyes got big, and they said, that is the thing that we would want the most. And I got to pray for them right there on my front porch. And you know what I found this week? I don't think it's that there's not needs all around us, all around me. You know what I think happens most often? We just simply don't have eyes to see them. It's not that there's not needs when you drive to work or in your neighborhood or at your work. It's just that we simply don't notice them. We don't see them. But you know what's the amazing part about God? Is he chooses often that you and I, we get to be the answered prayer for someone else. The God of the universe who could answer prayers in any way that he wants to, he often says, you know what? You're going to be their answer to prayer. We get to be a part. So the question I want us to ask today is, how are we doing at meeting the needs of others? How are we doing at even noticing those needs? Do you and I need to make a change where we begin to look for the needs of others and share with them what we have? In this way, we could actually serve Jesus. See, I think for a lot of us, we probably go, yeah, you know what? I probably need to be better at that. But how do you get started? So I wanted to give you an easy way that I actually started with in meeting the needs of others. I actually started with giving to eLife. Because you know what? I wasn't very consistent otherwise. It would be too random. So what I would do is I'd give to eLife, and what eLife does is they have partners both locally and globally that meet the needs of others. What we do is we give money to them and say, we want to meet the needs. Our church has always done this, and we will continue to do this. And look, this isn't the only way. This is really just a start. Because I don't know exactly what God is asking you to do. But I know this. I know that we all have to have eyes to see. Because there are needs all around us. And you and I, we need to serve Jesus by meeting the needs around us. Now I want you to check out a video. It's of two eLifers, Dwayne and Darcy Youngberg. And they have shared with eLife, and I want you to see their story and how it's impacted them. Check it out.
I think for me, it started growing up. My parents, we were always in church, and every Sunday they passed the offering plate. But my parents were always real diligent about giving each one of us kids $1 to put in the offering plate when they'd put their check in the offering plate. So I think that started. They instilled that in me, and then I think after we got married, started coming to church at eLife, we did Financial Peace University, and that's kind of what started the stir in our hearts, I guess, to start giving.
I was a little different. I didn't really have a good example growing up of giving, and so for a long time I just didn't want to. It was my money or our money, and we thought we should spend it however we wanted to. But there were several times, whether it was in the financial peace class or in church, where I'd be sitting there, and I was definitely one of those people where it's another week of tithing or giving or whatever talk it was at church that I'm like, oh, here we go again. And there was always a voice in the back of my head of God telling me that's something you need to do. I know it's good for you, I'm gonna bless you from it, but I just never gave in, I guess. But I can remember that happening several times, and then finally, we had a serious talk about it and decided that's what we needed to do. I think we like eLife that they're transparent with what they do with their money once they get it. They, give a certain percent away. They show us every year what they do with it. And so that, I guess, gives us peace of mind. We know what our money's doing once we give it away. We
weren't called to be directly in the ministry. We're not called to be missionaries, overseas or anywhere. But that's one way that we can support those missionaries, and that's one thing that we can give to, and eLife is really good about dispersing that money that way. And it makes me feel good knowing, again, that knowing where the money goes and know that we're making an impact to better God's kingdom. It's definitely drawn us closer. Before we started giving, we really didn't talk about money. I spent what I wanted to spend, he spent what he wanted to, and it's opened up that conversation. I think, again, Financial Peace kind of began that process, but we talk about it now. We've been able to pay off debt, and I don't think that we would have been able to do that without us taking that first step, because we struggled when we first got married financially.
I think for me, I would say to do it just to get that peace in your life. I talked about having that voice in my head every time they'd bring it up in church, but now I don't. I feel like we're doing what we're supposed to do, and that we're blessed beyond we could ever imagine for being obedient and doing what he's asked us to do.
It's hard at first to take that first step, and when you look at it as your money, it is hard to give it away. But once you do it, you start receiving blessings back, and it may not be financially, but you just, I don't know, it makes you feel good too, to know that you're giving to a greater cause. It's hard to say you have nothing to lose because you are giving your money away, but you don't. You're gonna reap many more blessings than you can ever imagine.
Thanks for spending some time with us today. If you'd like to know more about what God is doing at Experience Life, you can visit our website at experiencelifenow.com. Please let us know if we can serve you or your family in any way. We hope to hear from you real soon.